and welcome to Paws Gaming. I'm Misfit, and today I'm playing Kerbal Space Program. Finally, I've been meaning to play this game on the channel for a little while now, but haven't really had the chance to. So we are going to start up a game in career mode because, well, it is still one of my favorite modes in this game. Sandbox is great and all, but career I like just because it sort of forces you to actually think about what you're going to do next. Now, as you can see, since this is for Monster Paws, I went with the name Misfit myself. I'm going to go with the Monster Paws icon as our flag. So let's get this thing started. A couple things you might notice off the bat. This little thing right here. Why, yes, of course, I am using some mods. I put a full mod list down in the description below, but I sort of don't remember all of the mods I have in here. I do have HypeReddit, which I will not be using in this recording or any of the future recordings unless it is like literally 100% absolutely necessary. Because, well, it is quite literally cheating, and I would like to do like almost a regular space program the best I can. But I do have the stuff from the Interstellar mods. I do have some of the near future mods. I also have Tweak Scale, which I do really love, and I pray that it does get implemented into the game in some fashion where you can actually resize parts, because it is probably one of the most handy things to have. So, as you may already know or may not know, one of the big things about the career mode is science and managing your funds and your reputation here. Green is good, yellow is bad. You don't want to go into piss. You want to go into green because green is money. Better reputation means better contracts. More money means better parts you can use. And science is used to unlock a lot of the best parts. Because, much like a regular space program would have, starting way back during the time of the Mercury days, they didn't exactly have the world's best tech. And a lot of cool things were invented directly as a result of the space program existing, mostly because of the need for it. Computers became better, and a lot of other innovations happened about it. So let's get the show on the road. I don't exactly have enough money to upgrade anything or any science, so I'll just go straight into building so we can launch our first ship. Alright, so first we're going to need a capsule. And you can see right on there, we've got our little Monster Paws flag, which eventually we will be able to use once we upgrade some stuff. But for now, we're just going to make a very simple rocket. Use a solid rocket booster just to get us up into the air, because it's the only engines we've got right now. We'll unlock some more eventually. Some fins, so we can hold ourselves more or less straight on the path. And of course a parachute, which we will most definitely need. And we'll just throw on a couple of these for good measure. Science being the most important thing of it, you want to collect as much science as you can at any point. Nah, I'm sorry if I have some very unimaginative names for my rockets here to start with, but we'll work on getting something better for that. Now, as are different levels of science, there's your on ground science, your atmospheric, your high atmospheric, and your space science things. It's best to be prepared for them at each different level. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. You can have a lot of parts, or just by different strategies. And there are also multiple different regions on planets, planetoids, moons, and such that you can collect from the different biomes of the planet. That's to say, polar science is going to be a little bit different than just ground science at the launch pad, which will bring you next to nothing, but it's science all the same, so you might as well get it while you can. So first we're going to open up with the crew report. I'm going to keep that data and exit the capsule temporarily. Take an EVA report, which for whatever reason is going to count as flying over the shores. We're going to keep that. And we're going to go back here, take our data, and store the experiments again. That way we can actually do another crew report while we're in the air. Because at the moment we don't have ourselves upgraded enough to where we can exit in flights. Take one of these mystery goo readings right now. And let's kick this pig. Keeping relatively straight and actually getting up to a somewhat respectable velocity there. Mostly because we don't have a lot of weight holding the ship down, and this small engine can actually put out a lot of performance. Now, while we're here, we're going to see if there's any new data from the mystery goo. And yes, there is. Now, we probably won't break high enough to get the high atmospheric science, but it's worth checking out anyway. Now, as you see, our velocity is going down steadily as we reach the highest point of our quote-unquote orbit, because it ain't an orbit yet. It's far from it, in fact. And we can actually do our other crew reports and get some brand new data there. And now, as you can see, while this parachute is not red or in the yellow, it might not be a bad idea just to deploy it and get that out of the way. That way, for when we fall down, we don't go too fast and rip off the parachute. Because this is one sort of nice thing the game models in the most recent version is the parachutes. It does a better job of them, in that if you're going too fast, you'll rip off the chute. If you've overheated the chute, it won't fire because it's been damaged by heat. When it's yellow like this, if you haven't deployed the chute yet, there is a chance that you might lose it due to aerodynamic forces. If it's red, don't deploy it at all, because you will lose your parachute. Now watch, it'll be just my luck that I go through all the talk about this stuff of deploying the chute at the right time and I've already screwed it up. They'll just be poetic. But of course, if anyone can handle it, it's Jebediah. Now, since we went up on a mostly straight trajectory, we'll be landing very near to the launch pad. Probably just in a 10 to 20 meter radius. We might drift off as far as the runway there, just because of wind shear and other assorted extreme sports or whatever. Do, 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 do. And there we go. Our chute has deployed safely. And we hit a very lovely 10 Gs as we decelerate. That's kind of painful. Now what that means basically is when you're decelerating that fast to be up at the point of 10 Gs, you're encountering the same force as 10 times the Earth's gravity. Like, if you know your physics, mine is a little bit rusty, but if I remember correctly, Earth's gravity accelerates you at about 7.8 or 8.8, somewhere in there, meters per second every second. So you just keep going that much faster. 10 times that means you're decelerating at about 88 meters per second or 78. One of those numbers somewhere in that range. And you saw how fast that was. So more or less we just hit a brick wall and somehow we didn't snap our necks. So we'll just call that a win, see if we get anything new on the goo. And it still counts us as near to the launch pad. So yeah, not much drift from there. And we'll just recover this vessel. And look at all that lovely science we've collected. 34 in total. And we've got plenty of funds from just completing that mission alone. And a decent amount of rep to start with. So let's make the most out of this. Let's go to R&D and unlock some new stuff. Now, one of the nice features they've added recently, previously you needed a tech tree loader to load all the stuff from the Interstellar mod if you want to use it in career mode, but it seems to have been better integrated to where you can actually use Interstellar and some other mods in the base game. Base to a certain extent. Like, as you see, the more expensive stuff is way further on down the line as we get into stuff like antimatter reactors and Alcubierre drives. That's way off, and it'll probably be a long time before we ever get to that. And I don't know exactly if I'm going to make this a super long series where we try to get to that point, but that might be something worth looking into. And here you've got your more normal stuff. Different fuel tanks, RCS fuels. Here you got your aerodynamics with better pieces for your wings, air intakes, so on and so forth. But that is way far ahead of us. We are still down here with basic rocketry. So we'll dump 5 science into that to get some new engines. Some engineering to get a communications device, a decoupler, which is pretty much vital, and this thing right here called the Science Junior, which is just absolutely lovely for getting some starting science. So let's unlock this here so we get some better fins. And from there we can just move on. As you can see, we completely fulfilled both of those contracts. Now this would have been a nice one to have from the beginning. Test the flea at launch site. And that's the name of that small booster that we were using. Yeah, we could probably do this one too. Mark 16 parachute. Matter of fact, we can use roughly the exact same ship. And still get some new stuff out of it. Though, might redesign it just a little. So I'll just drop down the booster here a little bit. And add a decoupler. That's our parachute right there, and here is the Science Junior. A rather large little module here, which I'll attach there. Pop a decoupler on it, and put this in there. We probably won't get quite as high as the first time around because we're launching a heavier ship, but it's worth a shot. And since in all likelihood we won't be gathering any particularly new data, I'll keep the goo off the ship. Okay, let's do this now. Alright, let's check our contracts at the launch site. So everything's good to go on that. This we need to get up to at least 1100 to 1400. Speed of 50 to 140 meters a second. So we'll just be careful about that. Because we don't want to overshoot it. So I'll turn on my SAS and RCS just out of habit, even though it's not really going to do much, considering I don't have an SAS wheel on here and I don't have any RCS systems. But if you have a pilot, you can use very limited SAS, in that it'll just help keep control a little better. So let's go. Thing to note about solid boosters, of course, you cannot throttle them, and you can't shut them off. They just go. It's like firing a bottle rocket. You can't just sort of turn it off midway. I'm not sure if that's even going to be enough thrust to get us up to that point. Check where our apoapsis is. Nah, we're not even going to make it. So I might as well just collect some science while I'm up here. 17 science. And that's one thing I like about this, is it actually gives you quite a fair amount of it. And since we don't really need it, it's just going to weigh us down. I'll drop the booster. As we come to the top of our parabola here, now we start to go back down again. I think I'll save us a little bit of time and just time warp this. And that's actually our booster that we just passed up. We are falling faster than it because presumably those wings on it are giving it just enough lift to hold altitude mostly. And what we just heard was the booster landing somewhere and exploding. At least I hope that's what it was. I don't think I have anything else here that could have exploded. So we're going to land here at a very nice 6 meters per second. Alright, and we're going to recover this. This time around, we'll go for a slightly bigger booster. Something with a little more oomph to get us higher up into the atmosphere. And with 25 science again, we can revisit the R&D thing. It'll be 45 for basic aviation. So let's go with survivability. Because here's a couple things we're going to need later on. And eventually, general rocketry will be next on the list. Now then, one of the best ways to actually do this might be to use this larger booster, the hammer, and actually angle out slightly towards the ocean, because then we won't be using all of the booster's power just to go straight up. And we also run the benefit of we'll run into some ocean science, which we don't have any yet. Because we've basically done all over the grasslands that we can at the moment, because high altitude's still a bit far off. We could potentially get up to some high altitude science with this, but it might be better to just go with some more conservative estimates. I'll line those up with our fins so we keep this thing roughly balanced. And since we're doing something a little different, might as well give this a clever name. We shall call this the Poseidon 1, because we're probably going to be splashing down. And since we're angling for the ocean, I think it's a little bit more fitting than Test 2. So let's get ready for launch. But I think we'll just go with the one that I have. We'll just angle it off to about there. And just let it straighten off. As we break 800, almost 1,000. So we're actually going pretty high up in the atmosphere now. But is it high enough? Let's do a crew report and find out. Okay, we're flying over the water, so we're already getting new science. Upper atmosphere. I'll drop our booster as we get sort of a fair idea of where we might be landing. Okay. We're going to top out at 36,000 meters, roughly. Odds are, unfortunately, we probably will not be slow enough to actually perform the test that we need to on the parachute. As we reach down to about 11,000. Well, we're starting to slow down a little. But nope, it definitely will not be enough to activate the chute for the test. So I might have just overcooked that one a little bit, but hopefully we'll slow down enough to be able to safely engage the parachutes before we crash into the water and die. Okay. Yes, we have. Well, actually, no, I won't. I'll use that because we've got another I can still use once we splash down. So we can get some more science. Now, we've actually made it out fairly decently far from the space center, so this isn't so bad for distance traveled. Yep, Alright, we've traveled over 32 kilometers, so we'll call that a win. Okay, roll the ship over so I can get a little bit of extra science here. $16 science from that. Not bad. Though we're probably going to have to recover the ship manually. Let's go to the tracking station and see if we can find it there. Because we should have more science than that. And yes, as a matter of fact, we can see it right there. The Poseidon 1. $60 science. Oh yeah, we're doing pretty good. And here you can see some other places from the from contracts that we could accept, basically requiring you to do like EVA or crew report when over a certain area. But those I'll prefer to wait on until we can develop some good planes. So let's just head back into R&D once this loads up here. And get some new stuff. Not quite enough yet to unlock aviation. Oh, this one we could do, so we'll try that one out. But we're going to need a fairly big rocket. This time we're going to try and escape the atmosphere. Not by any means enough to get us into orbit, but more than likely enough to get us up high enough. Or I could just scrap this and go with a bigger booster in general. Ah yes, I do have a couple things from the Spacey mod. Like this booster here, which is a little on the narrow side. This one here, also very narrow. But this is where that one thing that I was talking about comes into play. Tweak scale. I can make this thing fit the appropriate size. Oh, I think we're pretty much ready for launch, but let's go with a different pilot this time to get some experience going around. Let's bring in Valentina. She will be the first Kerbal into space aboard this very uncommon piloted sounding rocket. And here we go. Plenty of power behind this thing. Roughly about as much as the Thumper, but probably a little bit more efficiently designed. Because one of the big problems with the SRBs is they're quite heavy, and as you can see, we're really cooking now. Yeah, and we're dead. Maybe we'll try that a little bit differently. We'll just pretend that never happened. We'll do a slightly unconventional design here and have a heat shield at the top. Actually, come to think of it, I didn't even put a heat shield on the bottom here. Or did I? Yeah. Since we know this will get hot enough to destroy everything, might as well do this a bit safer. Move those up so they're down behind the heat shield. Now, thanks to the design, we're also going to get a lot more drag on the ship, just because of the heat shield up there. But, granted, it will slow us down in getting out there, but if we do reach the critical point where it starts turning into heat damage, this will be a little bit safer. 1700 meters per second. Yeah, this is a really powerful booster. But then again, it's also a very light craft. We should be getting pretty far out there. 224. Yeah, that's pretty good. $224,000 meters. If I remember correctly, that's actually pretty well outside of Earth's atmosphere. Because one thing worth note is, while this is modeling an actual solar system to an extent, a lot of the planets are really well scaled down. Kerbin's atmosphere only goes out to 70,000, then it just cuts off. Earth's atmosphere goes out much further than that, but it doesn't so much exactly have a dead cutoff at a certain point as it just sort of slowly starts dissipating towards nothing. Like, even outwards towards the orbits of the International Space Station, there's still very slight traces of atmospheric particles. Just not really enough to cause too many problems, where it would be slowing them down too much. Now that we're here, we can actually get some really good science. Now the question is, will be far enough out to get some good readings that aren't near Kerbal orbits? Answer there is probably not. But it's still a fair amount of science, so we'll keep it. Okay, we've passed Apoapsis and are starting our descent. Probably want to get out of cockpit and stay out so we can line up with our retrograde vector. That way we've got a heat shield pointing towards it. Because that's pretty much how we're going to be entering the atmosphere. And it's also going to be the direction that most of the heat is going to be traveling from as we go through the atmosphere. So we want the heat shields to be able to soak that up. Now, while there is still plenty of ablator resource left in this one, I think we'll use the fresh heat shield. Now, since we don't have true SAS, I can't track any vectors, so we gotta do this manually. best part is we'll actually get some extra science points for simply making it into space, as opposed to just suborbital launches within the atmosphere. This is still technically a suborbital launch because we didn't actually make it into orbits. So I'm just going to speed this up a little bit until we're around 80,000. Right there. So now we're going to start entering the atmosphere again, and I want to line back up with the vector. Another reason I want to be aligned with that is if I'm not, then the heating is going to be uneven, and I could lose these goo containers, which are holding quite a bit of very nice science, and I don't want to be losing those. Which I just have, unfortunately. Since we spun out of control. But at least out of all the things we lost, still have the parachutes. So this, all in all, isn't a total loss. Though it could have been a lot better. So let's recover this vessel and get our little bit of science. So a lot of that higher altitude science is going to remain sort of mysterious to us for a little while, until I can get some better parts to have better control over the craft. But for now, I shall unlock the basic aviation stuff, and next time on Kerbal Space Program, we're going to make some planes. So thank you everyone for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, share it to your friends if you're feeling especially adventurous. As always, we'd really love the comments. The comments to us are basically right now, like that last mission, not working out so well. They are not happening. So, again, thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.